has it worked? Is it beneficial? Without question, it has worked, and it's not without its little arm wrestles here and there, and disappointments and expectations that haven't been met. That's going to go on forever. But are we a stronger community today than we were in 2010? Without question. Has the merger helped our community? I don't know anyone that would say it hasn't, in terms of just the sheer, not just programming and different, but it's the overall value of what a combined conservative and reformed synagogue brings to a community, which is so much more than either one by itself.
That day was an interesting day. I did have one of the Sifrei Torah, and it was a lovely moment of arrival at the synagogue. I recall it being extremely warm, and but that's how our greeting was as well. It was just a lovely afternoon, as best I could recall.
There's a bit of pomp and circumstance about it. The idea of, oftentimes traditionally, it's walking the Torahs from one place to another. In this case, we weren't walking them; they were in cars. But that was really significant.
Loading the Sifrei Torah into the car is like any other time you're moving from one home to another. You grab your most precious things and put them in the car. The other things are all packed up and gone on a truck, but your most precious things are in the car. And there we were with our Sifrei Torah and each other.
The day that we actually moved the Torahs from Congregation Eilat to Temple Beth El, I was one of the people that got to hold the Torah and transport it in my car, put it like a child in the back of my car and put the seatbelt on. I remember singing Eitz Chaim Hi, it's a tree of life to us. But that particular time, it was August of 2010. It was a moment for me. And I remember just kind of holding the Torah and stroking it and just holding it close to my heart.
I was so immensely and pleasantly surprised at what greeted us.
Everyone from Eilat started walking in, and we cheered, and everyone cheered, and it was a really happy event.
What was most poignant about the experience was really on the first few days of my job as being a rabbi, seeing how ritual can help support a moment of transition. And it wasn't simply going through the motions of Jewish life. It was really looking at the life cycle of synagogue and Jewish community. I think the emotion that I didn't expect to find were the emotions of loss.
And we went into the sanctuary, the little chapel downstairs, and I didn't know that I was going to be placing it in the ark that we placed it in. And that particular ark was the traveling ark that my late husband and Michael Baker had designed and built. They were both engineers. They designed it so that it could be broken down and go with USY. And now our Torahs from Congregation Eilat were being placed in the chapel at Temple Beth El in this ark that my husband had built. My sons had designed the eternal light, the Ner Tamid over it. And it was just a moment of marriage and joining. And it was a transformative moment. And yes, I remember that day well.
That was one of the hardest days of my life, I'll tell you. Leaving our home in Mission Viejo was a very difficult time. Our family was all together for a very sad moment, saying goodbye to a place that we were at for a very long time. But our friends were all coming, we were all gathered together, and it became a sad moment into a joyous moment when we arrived at Bethel and saw the love and the warmth waiting for us there.
The day that I experienced it for the first time in its, physical manifestation was as we, in the lobby at the time I was at the front desk and was in my typical space of greeting people and smiling, but really became pretty overwhelmed with emotion quickly as the chuppahs were raised and they're coming was being announced, and it's giving me chills now, even like reliving it in my mind. And all of this energy and enthusiasm of going into the unknown, yet with reflection and gratitude for what happened, for hope and optimism. It was just palpable, and it was a lot of people that were coming through at once. So it kind of made me think of, simultaneously my own journey coming into the congregation, and also, of course, like the Jews coming out of Mitzrayim. It was what I imagined, like a flood of people coming into and through a narrow place, and then coming out into a more spacious one. It was pretty amazing.
The future was uncertain, but it became very evident when we arrived that this would be our home. We were greeted with the chuppah, with loving people lined up to greet us, to welcome us, to hug us, to let us know it was going to be okay. And they never let us down.
It is an interesting experiment to have two forms of worship under the same roof. So we were, in a way, not following a blueprint that we could learn from.
When we came to Temple Bethel, the chapel had been a multi-purpose room and had been used by the school and the tenants as well, and a church and whatnot. And it became our holy space.
I was fortunate that right out of the beginning of the merger, I was involved in the team that designed the new chapel. The contractor that built the sanctuary, the most recent remodel of the sanctuary at that time, was the individual that we utilized. It was decided that the new ark would be right in front of the stained glass windows, and so it proportionally fit the room a little bit better. And then, of course, one of the things we were concerned with at Congregation a lot, in our sanctuary, we had memorial boards, really large, very heavy memorial boards. And the contractor came up with a great idea. Obviously, you can see it today, of actually insetting them into the walls on both sides of the chapel, so they just seem like they were there forever. And then one of the neatest things was the original Congregational lot stained glass arch doors were mounted on our facility inside the chapel. And so when people walked in, they sort of felt like, for lack of a better term, home. There was really a true piece of a lot of history sitting there, welcoming everybody as they came into the new chapel. The ark was the central focus, and then there's a matching stender, and then there's a little piece of furniture that rises, so you can put books on it. For an example, for an individual that's sitting there holding the Torah, you can place your Siddur on there, and you can follow the service. So all of the woodwork matches everything that's in the room together.
I just thought that room, we all knew what it looked like. It wasn't bad, but oh my God, it's just a pleasant place to go. And, a little bit reminds me of synagogues in Israel that are small, and every, neighborhood has one. It's very nice.
I love the fact that as a result of congregation Elot joining us and becoming part of Temple Bethel, we also have this beautiful worship space in our chapel downstairs. It's just so cozy to be in that beautiful space that was created, for originally just for our conservative worship, but they created such a beautiful, cozy space that it just enhances my feeling when I'm there for a Reform service. And many times I'll look around at the Reform service there and see members that identify, primarily with conservative worship. And I'm sure other people see the same when they're at the conservative worship service. I just love the fact that we have the choice.
I remember the first time I went to a service, and being that I've only been a Reformed Jew, one of the things I had always heard about the difference was the length of the service and the amount of Hebrew. And I decided to check it out one Saturday morning. So I went there and I was a little bit late, and I walked in, and immediately I had no idea where we were in the service, but it was clear. And it turned out the gentleman who came to help me, because he saw I was not in the right place, was Marty Stein, who, as I turned out, is this wonderful man who that's his way. But for me, that was my first impression of the congregation, that how helpful and welcoming they were.
When my sister passed away, I went back to New York. And I came back here and I decided to have 2 nights of Shiva with my California family. And at that time, we had just merged. And 2 members of the Marty and Steve came. They did not know me, but they taught me what doing a mitzvah is all about, because they came into a stranger's home to help her, and that's when I realized that we were a family.
When there's a stranger in our chapel, they're not a stranger for very long. People line up to talk to them. People welcome them. We want them to come back. And sitting over lunch, I think, is an amazing feature that we have. Food always brings Jewish people together. It's just, I think we're just the most warm, loving family around. And we happen to be a shul.
I can honestly say that there were aspects of my Judaism that I was searching for, and I had no idea that my answers would be through the conservative worship. I was a little bit skeptical, and the warmth of the people, which continues to this day, has really, really been fantastic. I totally have been blown away by how participatory the conservative prayer service is.
One of the things that I love and appreciate about the conservative minyan that meets on Saturday morning is the sense of family. You have people that come regularly that have created that space. In a lot of congregations, I think people count on the leadership to create the space. But Saturday morning is lay-led in many respects, and so much involvement from the community, and people are there supporting each other every week, and people look forward to it. And I think that's so special and, again, very unique about our community. And I really appreciate that people have crossed the bridge. Those who consider themselves Reform members come and attend some of our Saturday morning minyanim, like our Jerusalem Shabbat services, and we have plenty of conservative members who come on Friday night to daven with us, and it's not feeling so separate anymore.
have a tradition of either the family of a bar mitzvah student maybe greeting people on Friday night and or Saturday morning. I would teach them to quietly tell the person what page we're on, so if they entered late, they would know where we were, and to make them feel comfortable. And why it's important, because it's like that audacious hospitality idea. From the minute you walk in, you don't want to feel like you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do.
One of the really big changes that happened early on is we had Nava Tehillah who came to visit us from Jerusalem, and our band spent time with them, and we talked about worship styles and how we invite people into the space. So that experience with Nava Tehillah, I think, gave us the courage to make the decision to get rid of the podium, and I wanted to invite the band onto the bima to sit with the clergy, so that the congregation then became an extension of the bima. And that was, I think, nerve-wracking at the beginning for our rabbis who weren't necessarily used to that. But then I think there was an openness after our first experience together. It just kind of blew everyone away at how inclusive it felt and how natural it felt. And through experimentation in services, we then were able to expand services to our outdoor Shabbat, where we could include the band and we could include the choir. And that's been a big part of my cantorate, is really wanting to create services that had leadership not just from clergy, but from community members. Again, that's such a beautiful thing that we see in the chapel with conservative services, and maybe wasn't experienced as much in Reform services at the synagogue. But we've been, again, just bringing people in to come and participate and sing and lead different things. And, it does take time. And those who are very used to davening a particular way for high holy days are now finding themselves going up and down between the sanctuary and the chapel to be able to experience services in different ways. Because again, each of those spaces is so unique for high holy days. So it's nice to see people expanding their horizons.
For high holy day services, I used to feel torn. I want to be in two places, and obviously I couldn't, so I would have to pick and choose which service I would attend, conservative, and which Reform. And thinking about it, that's kind of a nice problem to have, other than I don't want to be there because I don't like it. I like two of the two offerings. And then, I've been, anytime there's been a holiday or a festival, I think we've been strengthened by the fact that we have people with different, in a way, different religious backgrounds attending.
I remember, again, my first Kol Nidre pledge, where I ran upstairs and downstairs. And I really was actually fascinated by that experience. So I'm delivering the same Kol Nidre pledge speech, so to speak, to all the congregants in two different settings. But the message was clear. The message was exactly the same. I remember attending, and I believe it was the first Kol Isha service, and was blown away by just the participation. And it wasn't all women, a lot of women, but I just remember how impressed I was. Wendy Lupo had done such a phenomenal job and has continued to do so in truly bringing the community together in one setting.
Very quickly, I fell in love with a Kol Isha service. We had never had anything like that. And, with the wonderful organizational skills and talents of Wendy Lupel and her crew that helps her do it each time, what a wonderful idea that was. And from the first moment, it really became annually a very inspiring and inspired experience.
It isn't just a reform thing. It isn't just a conservative thing. It isn't even just a thing for people that are into worshiping. It's something that the entire community feels connected to. And it has become one of the best attended services and events of the entire year.
We have Marty Stein that for years has been leading our healing service on Tuesday evenings, which gives all of our congregants an opportunity to either come say, prayers for their healing or for other family members or friends, and as well as an opportunity to say Kaddish for a loved one.
And I mentioned to the rabbi after going to services on Friday evenings that I was absolutely struck by the number of people who would stand up as Rabbi Levy or one of the other rabbis would go around the room for the Refuah Shlema prayer. And it got me thinking that maybe there was an opportunity there for us. I said, well, I'll come up with a service, but I don't want to do it in a conservative way because it'll be over in 8 minutes or 15 minutes, and it will not be attractive to the Reform community whatsoever, except maybe if they have to say Kaddish or they wish to. And then from there, the one offshoot was using the Sefer Torah and letting people touch the Torah for the Refuah Shlema prayer. And then lastly, in the last several months, to do the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, and do that arm in arm. I think the experiment with our Jerusalem Shabbat 8, 9, 10 times a year is one that it seems to have a little bit of an ebb and flow to it, but the service gets more beautiful each time, in my opinion, with a combination of Rabbi Kavod's soulfulness and the beauty of the music of Cantor Young, and then the percussion, which knocks me out. I just think it's a service that too spans the movements.
Jerusalem Shabbats, I just remember as being so engaging, so welcoming, and it was truly a blend. And I think that everyone that attends those services feels that way. It's not us and them, it's one.
I think Salzburg Shabbat, particularly upstairs if it's in the rotunda, I just have a thing for that rotunda area. I think that is a very, very special service. To me, that's a blessing from heaven. That is just so unusual and so different. And again, we get to put aside our reform and conservative hats, and any time we can do that, I think we're going to build a congregation.
Most recently, Rabbi Kavod and I created the Soul Spark Shabbat, which was a crazy brainchild I had based on a vision I had for Slichot, which was bringing everybody into the rotunda, which is this gorgeous space with live acoustics that just is otherworldly. And to create a space where the leadership came from the circle. It wasn't from one focal point, but with everybody sitting in the round and the band in the middle and the lighting dimmed and all of the different thought and detail that went into creating that space. And Rabbi Kavod and I thinking about particular meditations and things that we wanted to highlight. Themes, not necessarily pieces of liturgy. A lot of the music that we do as part of the Soul Spark Shabbat is not the standard liturgy that we would typically use on a Friday night. And we were very deliberate about being consistent with the melodies so that they could become part of the fabric of that service, and people can count on that music because it's very participatory. I was also very intentional about bringing in different instruments. So again, I wanted Soul Spark to be something really unique.
When I speak to people and tell people about us being dual affiliated, I say that we do everything together except for services. That's it. I think our larger events like the gala, Hot August night, definitely comedy night is a huge draw. And I see people from both the conservative and reform congregation.
These opportunities to really blend our community have happened more naturally through things like small groups where we can sit with other people in more intimate spaces in each other's homes and talk about, it's not always on topic, which is pretty great too. Just a nice opportunity to come together and connect and realize that we're not all so different. And I think for so many people who have it in their head that this is a conservative event or this is a reform event, and things like small groups kind of blows that out of the water.
The women's retreat was really Patty and my way of really truly integrating into Temple Bethel as a family. It was the first time we had the opportunity to really develop deep relationships with other people in the community. And that is absolutely one of the ways I think we really showcase all of us together, is when we're in the midst of anything that is relationship oriented and less so worship oriented, because really that is predominantly the only way you can tell the difference.
It was a women's retreat for women. It didn't have to be separate communities, in that we came together and we worshiped together and enjoyed being women in this together. And it's slowly grown, and it's been really nice and enjoyable to share that moment with women from both, well, it's not both anymore, so from our temple, yeah, that choose to worship differently.
And through discussions with people over Shavuot, through adult learning, I've learned that the community has a yearn to learn. They really want to know more about their traditions and their, history and their Bible.
The first thing that comes to mind, since I'm on the committee, is the spirituality committee and the meditation retreat. And that has definitely been an evolution from that I believe has been sparked from our union. And the events that has moved forward has been fantastic.
This is what I have here. I don't know if you can see it. Never in my life would I thought I'd go on a meditation retreat or meditate.
If you see something that you'd like to have happen, there is plenty of support, plenty of space for you to take the lead and create it happen.
I mean, one of the things that I love about bringing up our kids in a dually affiliated community is that they have so many more things that they're exposed to of what Judaism and Jewish ritual could look like and be about.
In a dually affiliated synagogue, as
as Rabbi Kavod said just now, is it opens the children up to many more possibilities, so they're not confined by the restrictions that the religion puts on them, but more by the possibilities that it has for them, and that it's, you know, they can pick and choose in what speaks to them and how they want to relate to God, how they want to relate to religion through different practices that both the Reform and conservative community gives them.
Being a madrich is really great because, I mean, it's not like your typical job in the way that there's a lot stronger of a tight-knit community, especially between the people who work there. But not only that, which is, at least in my experience, the kids were all great. I'm considering, you know, if I had the choice to, I would teach them another year. And really, that's been, not only has it bring an incentive community with people my age, but, you know, it's really helped me give back to the community for the upcoming generations, so to speak. And Bestie, really, that's been more of a fundamental part of who I am, you know, like the roots that it builds in community, right? I know that the people there will be there for me, you know, even after I leave the program, and, you know, I want other people to have the same opportunity.
I also had the first time of the Tzedakah board class. It was really a nice chance to feel like an adult. We sat around like a boardroom table, and we were dealing with more money than most of us had ever seen. And so it was really an interesting experience. And I'm glad that I got to be part of the first time with that.
I will say too, I feel such just joy and pride when we come together around Sukkot and Simchat Torah and Purim, of course. But I think about Sukkot and Simchat Torah for two reasons. Sukkot because we are literally physically embodied in a hut that is temporary. And when all of us come together on that Shabbat, Friday night during Sukkot, and we have Kabbalat Shabbat that's energy and fun and like getting us into the mood, and then we go outside and we experience in our temporary dwelling our peoplehood. And I see no walls there, no boundaries holding people apart, only a one thing in common that brings us together.
You know, it's one thing to sit in a service on a Shabbat, either on Friday evening or Saturday morning, and go through the ritual process. But when you listen to Cantor Young's voice, or her sermon, or Rabbi Kavod's drashes, and they connect to what's going on in the daily readings of the Torah, or just in the world in general, it just brings you so much closer. And I think that's really been critically important, and even right now, even more so, that our community has embraced all of those individuals that have helped us along the path this last decade to feel like we're all one community, and we'll continue to be so.
I think our clergy team is really excellent. They work collegially together. When they say they're going to do something, they do it. They are very accessible to people. I think that they're working to create a sense of community that develops like a spiritual roadmap for, you know, a soulful kind of community that also is involved in all kinds of social action.
I just think Kavod is marvelous. I think he's done a great job. I think perhaps because of in his youth, he was brought up with somewhat of a Reform background. He has more of an understanding that somebody that was raised from when they were born in a conservative capacity.
In a congregation that has a dual affiliation, that clergy whether he or she is a cantor or a rabbi. It takes a very unique person to move that organization in the direction that we need to go. And that person has to be very flexible and versed in both areas.
It's been an interesting transition, having now Rabbi Kavod and Cantor Young lead us, and they very much as a team address the needs of all of us, but also try to get a common thread through all of us, regardless of what practice we are, whether we're conservative, reform, and really trying to find the things about progressive Judaism that we can all embrace.
And Cantor Young is also a really amazing musician as well as just a really amazing person, and I got the pleasure to be in through some spots, and I got to play in that band for some time, and obviously I get to go to the Friday night services all the time, and she's also a really welcoming person, and she just brings everybody together, and always she writes amazing music and performs amazing music, and just is just a great cantor to have, and great spiritual leader. She's also great with the Bestie teens and the way that she inspires them to be better people, and she delivers, strong messages to help us be better people.
Cantor Young brings a very different worship style than I was used to in coming in. But even though I was raised Reform, I didn't really go to synagogue very much. I wasn't very involved in organized Reform Jewish life. But since being able to have Cantor Young as a partner, she, through her own original music, through the way that she brings her soul and spirit to prayer and to worship, I know that she will be able to help create certain kinds of spiritual experiences that are what I want for our community. So, so that's something that is that's there. And then on the other hand, I look and I see that I know that one of the things that I bring to our clergy team in this is a real sense of how our Jewish ritual and tradition is designed to create certain experiences and certain states of awareness. So it becomes really clear as we're planning out a service that's creative, I don't want to just cut this part or cut this part, because in my mind, there's something really integral to what the function of that piece of liturgy that's doing in the service. And so I'll bring that particular voice in. And so kind of both of us coming together, we're able to create something that I think has a lot of integrity to our Jewish tradition, but also, also creative and soulful.
All good marriages, you've got two partners in those marriages, but you each bring things that are different. You each have different interests. And in a marriage, you need to be able to do your interests, I hate to say on your own, but you do. You want to educate your partner. You want them to enjoy some of it with you. But there's always going to be things that you're going to do that are of particular interest to you and that your partner's going to do. And even in this blended model of Judaism, I think we celebrate that we've got such a large body of things that we can all do together, and we still celebrate those things that are the traditions behind both Reform and conservative practices.
The day of arriving at Bethel was a very big celebration. It made me think of a wedding, actually. There was a teeny little bit of, I wonder what this is going to turn out to, and a whole bunch of, oh my God, this is amazing. Our Jewish community is growing.
As we arrived, you could see a whole community of people out on the patio, just waiting for us, literally with open arms. They had tali-toed up as chuppahs, and we were arriving at our wedding, and we paraded through the sacred tunnel with our Sifrei Torah to all these new faces, people we didn't know. And they were smiling and they were patting us on the back and they were embracing us. And it all snaked around on the ground floor to the chapel and erupted in singing. And we carried our Sifrei Torah up to the Bima. It took whatever pain and sting we had of leaving Mission Viejo. It just told us we were in a good place where we were going to have a relationship just like when you get married.
It feels like the way a wedding would feel, you know, and I think about, especially in the classic sense, that the way that a lot of times a wedding would occur is the family would escort one of the, you know, the usually the bride from her home toward her new would-be husband. And within that, there is a real mix of emotions, if we're going to be really honest with what's being felt, right? There's a bit of concern and feeling of loss. There's a bit of concern and feeling of loss and anxiety of what was, right? And almost a sense of mourning what was, and considering what could have been if things had gone differently. But on the other side of it, upon arrival and being greeted, as it seemed to be, by such happy, joyous faces, it really feels like a celebration, especially with the sort of chuppah-like setup and the escorting of the Sifrei Torah. It really feels like a coming together of two families to make a new family.
I don't think that we really understood the cultural challenges at the front end. You know, I think people came into the and I call it a marriage between the congregations. I think people still came into it with some preconceived notions about, well, you do it differently than we've done it, and how can we possibly get along with all of that? And I don't know that, in hindsight, I think we could have done a better job of really getting people more enmeshed early on and focused on the similarities. I think at the beginning there were more, you know, we had a lot of differences, and we weren't quite sure how to bring the people together to get to demonstrate that those differences, while there, were really things to celebrate and learn from. But I think, you know, given time, I think people started to recognize really that the combination of both Reform and Conservative, of Beth El and Eilat in one family, really let us play on the strengths that we each brought.
On a personal level, it's helped me understand Jewish law in a deeper way, because I have to look at both sides of what the conservative movement says, what the reform movement says, and to bring, like in a marriage, to bring it all together in a way that serves us really as a tree of life, that really allows us to live Torah lives, both as reform and conservative together, and really a Jewish life.
Right, and I'm reminded a little bit of a teacher of mine, Reb Mimi Feigelson, when I asked her once about, you know, my and Heather's relationship, how I always felt a little funny about saying, you know, she's my other half, because the idea of a half plus, you know, I felt like a whole person. She said, well, you're doing the math wrong. She said, you're doing the math wrong. It's not addition, it's multiplication, right? It's 1 times 1 equals 1. So in that way, you had, you know, one family, one spiritual family coming together with another spiritual family to make a new spiritual family.
I think the whole idea that we're seeing this as a marriage of you know, two communities coming together, and the idea being that when a marriage, right, both are transformed by it, and both for the better, you know, moving forward. That while there might have been an independent history, coming together, it's really forging it together. And so I think using the idea of a marriage, and it was a brit, right? And our MOU, our Memorandum of Understanding, to a large degree, was something like a brit, a covenant about how we want to move forward. So pushing that metaphor was really effective, right? That this is a marriage, this is a coming together, this is a transformation for all of us as individuals, as well as a transformation for our communities. It's not simply, oh, they folded, we'll take their members and we'll have more members now. You know, I'm like, that's not what's going on here. And you know, this is really about who we are as a community and how we see ourselves as serving the Jewish community in South Orange County and how we change moving forward. This is what multi-denominational means. And it's not just diversity. Yeah, we were already diverse. We had diverse people. Diversity is a description. Right? We got tall people, we got short people, we got, you know, the variety of ages. Pluralism is a value, because pluralism says that we put a value on that diversity, that they bring something and contribute something to the whole that we wouldn't otherwise get. And that was, you know, part of the conversation from the very beginning with the leadership and then with the entire community, that, you know, this isn't just bringing on people who don't have anywhere else to go or this is not about getting more members, right? We weren't in a place that we were unhealthy, that we needed, like that was the bottom line. This is a transformative step. And that's why I think, so having that day one of raising the chuppot, and, you know, and having the chuppahs and having the community singing and welcoming and dancing, you know, it's like, you know, that was my vision of this is how you celebrate coming together. And this is what this is all about. Because we really, on one level, we're just the Jewish people.
I think what is helpful about placing the Torahs as central, especially the Sifrei Torah as the printed, tangible text of it, is regardless of where we find ourselves on the spectrum of Judaism, geographically, denominationally, personally, historically, that is our central text. That is something that feels shared by all Jews everywhere. So to be able to say, as we were previously somewhere else and you were previously somewhere else, we all still shared this central text. And so this is something that we can all come together over and find commonality in. Regardless of how we interpret it, read it, use it in our daily lives, it is still the central text to us.
So Bruce, how did Bethel come to be?
It came to be on a soccer field in Laguna Niguel. Tricia and Helen both were complaining that there just isn't a conveniently located synagogue close by. And I rather naively and generally optimistically said, so how bad can it be? We'll build one. We had potential members from all areas of Judaism. I believe there were some Orthodox, there was Reconstructionists. Helen and I both came. I came from a conservative background, Helen more of an Orthodox background, and Reform. And we really didn't care that much about what we became as long as we built a synagogue. We just didn't come in with any preconceived notions on what it had to be.
And we really felt that we didn't want to compete with Eilat. We wanted to make sure that both of the synagogues would thrive so that there wasn't a competition of another conservative synagogue within 10, 15 miles. So that's kind of where we got to be Reform. It wasn't any conscious decision or any ideological point of view. It was, we need a synagogue for a lot of the people that can't get to Eilat. Let's do it Reform so that we don't compete and we all can be happy.
Well, I grew up in a conservative synagogue, and it was funny when I first moved to Reform Synagogue, trying to relearn the songs and the tunes. It was an interesting transition for me, and I wanted, it was a little bit difficult. And every time I go to a conservative service, I'm back to being a child. Now, my dad used to take me to shul. He called it shul. He didn't call it anything, but he used to take me to shul on Friday nights. And my father is an Eisenberg, and the chapel is named for him, the Sidney Eisenberg Chapel. And he loved shul, and he loved everything about it. And he would take me. I was the one that I have an older sister, but I was the one that went to synagogue with him on Friday nights. I helped design that chapel, the stained glass windows. My mom actually, that was a gift from her to the synagogue. So that chapel is very special to me. So the fact that the conservative synagogue is in there, it means so much to me. And I feel like my dad is there because I went to synagogue with him every Friday night. So I love being in that chapel.
I wasn't Jewish when I came here. So the fact that I'm president now is a huge leap from when I first walked in the door. At that time, I just asked Rabbi Krauss at that time, I think I want to raise my kids Jewish. What does that mean for me? And he said, as long as you raise your kids Jewish, as far as I'm concerned, you're Jewish. It's so much of who I've become and who my friends and community are and what my values are. And I can easily explain to somebody how much I love being Jewish and why I do. So it has been, other than having children and being married, probably being a Temple Beth El member has done more for me as a person than anything else in my life.
It was the gala where Shirley and Lou Einbund, and I don't remember who else was there, but it was a combination of people that was everybody. And I looked at Shirley and I said, does this feel like we're home? And she said, yes, it does. It's not my imagination. And that was really very, very dear, because that was really only 6 or 7 years into our being together. And clearly everybody was together. And it was very, very nice. It was a good feeling.
When we first completed the merger 10 years ago, we really weren't sure what the world was going to look like. We just knew it was the right thing for us to be doing then. And as I've had the opportunity to, continue to serve on the board, and serve in different capacities and get more involved in the broader Jewish landscape, we really were cutting edge. We were ahead of where I think Judaism is going to have to go going forward.
I think that we are at the leading edge of this, and we're going to have to invent it as we go. And that's okay, because there'll be some things which won't work perfectly, but there'll be other things that work perfectly, and we'll be able to create a model for ourselves going forward, and also for other congregations who are going to try this strategy for themselves.
Temple Beth El of South Orange County is one of the few duly affiliated synagogues in the country and in the world. There are others, but very few I know that are duly affiliated as both part of the conservative and reform movements. I would say that both of these movements really define us as progressive Jewish movements, specifically that we value qualities of pluralism and egalitarianism. We want to be inclusive in finding inroads for people of all different backgrounds to be part of our community. Our synagogue is half or more filled with interfaith families, intermarried families. And so, by being a progressive Jewish organization and affiliated with both movements in Judaism, Reform and Conservative, we're really positioned to have a very welcoming stance to all the people that come into our community.
Being dually affiliated is really an advantage for our families who maybe parents or grandparents grew up in a conservative or reform congregation, and then the children and the grandchildren are in the opposite, and we can provide an education, we can provide a service that meets both of those needs for the families to feel comfortable in both places. Like, nobody ever really feels like they're having to choose one or the other. They're just getting to be Jewish.
The name of our synagogue, the Samueli Center for Progressive Judaism. I mean, we are kind of the trendsetter with this.
To have both things in one place, I think is remarkable.
No matter whether you're Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Reconstruction, we're all Jews. And basically our differences are the way we worship, and we can definitely learn from each other and take snippets of each into our own hearts.
We're trendy, really. We really are. We combine everything. There's something for everyone.
It's not conservative, it's not reform, it's TBE.
You wouldn't know, in my mind, that this is something that just happened 10 years ago. Because this is how we are.
A good number of years afterwards, since I had talked to so many folks, and we had done it so successfully that I received calls from all over the country, from other communities, looking to glean wisdom from our experience. And I really started to see of what we had done as a really, as a model for lots of Jewish communities out there to really meet the needs of the Jewish people where they are in a way that is open and embracing and enhancing versus divisive and judgmental.
It would be my blessing for Temple Bethel and the community members there to be able to have the perspective of what a big deal it is to build a pluralistic community. It's truly pluralistic. But at the end of the day, this is still on the cutting edge of what Jewish community can look like. This is something that can really be a model for the rest of the Jewish world and be part of really moving things forward.
I wish for our Temple Bethel community that we're here in the community forever, that many, many families find us and fall in love with our synagogue the way I have. I think they will find it so fulfilling and so lovely. It's been a beautiful, beautiful home for my family, and I love our synagogue.
My hopes and wishes for our community is that its doors of its hearts, its building, whatever space we are, that our hearts are open, and those doors to that heart are open for Jews like me to walk through and find, no matter where geographically, spiritually, psychologically, wherever they are coming from, that we can always find each other at Temple Bethel of South Orange County in this community of sacred souls.
So my hopes and dreams for in the future is for our synagogue to just flourish and grow with opportunities, and for the people to just unite and be as one.
I just wish that the dual affiliated congregation of Temple Bethel of South Orange County continues to grow. We keep our friendships alive, our kavanah, our love of God, and our doing tikkun olam for the world.
Even though some of the people, when we moved those Torahs to Temple Bethel, are no longer with us, I remember them. They're part of that tree of life. They seeded to us new life. And I think we will continue as long as we lead our community holding on to that tree of life, whether it's in the form of meditation or melody or nigun. I think there's a huge future for us as long as we hold on to each other and that tree of life, because we are the tree of life.
My prayer is that we're in a place of listening to one another, that we can really understand one another, that we can trust one another and lean on one another a little bit and not feel like we have to be everything to everyone, but to figure out who we are authentically and to be able to bring the best of ourselves and to be able to celebrate that and let go of the things that don't serve us anymore.
May our future together become an example of cooperation that will in fact lead to an extremely successful, loving merging of the two communities into one, so that we can be a light unto the congregations all over the country.
I hope that in 50 years, the pictures on the walls of the kids who participate, of the clergy, is grown to fill up the walls like it does in Europe, in European congregations, in East Coast and Southeast congregations where they have been there since 1850, or, if we could start in 1982 and in 50 more years still be in existence and having brought the two more generations into the future, leading the Jewish community, and knowing that your kids will have their kids be part of either our congregation or another congregation somewhere else, but they learned from us. We were the seeds that they grew into bigger plants and big trees. Yeah, that's what I hope. That we've planted good seeds. Sorry, I'm crying.
I want to see inclusion. I want to see openness. And I want to see us as one unified, it sounds stupid, but one unified, diverse community, that we will be able to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Temple Beth El with open hearts and open arms.
So what do you like about being a part of a duly affiliated synagogue that has both Reform and conservative practices?
Well, I feel more comfortable about being it and more happier about it, because that means I get to meet more Jews, because some Jews follow one practice and some Jews follow another, and since it's duly affiliated, that means that our synagogue's, Temple Beth El's population can grow, which I really like, because I can meet new people.
Good.